Gary Aboud's Dotishology, When Activism Becomes Absurdism, an editorial by Professor Wall Street.
In the theater of national discourse, few performances have been as spectacularly misguided as Gary Aboud's recent declaration that Prime Minister Kamla should face the International Criminal Court, ICC, for war crimes against humanity. The president of Fishermen and Friends of the Sea has not merely crossed the line, he has pole vaulted over the boundaries of reason, credibility, and basic understanding of international law.
Aboud's wild accusation, stemming from a U.S. military operation in Caribbean waters, represents more than poor judgment. It is a masterclass in what can only be described as Dotishology, the systematic study and practice of profound foolishness elevated to an academic discipline. War crimes are among the most serious charges in international law, reserved for those who orchestrate genocide, systematic torture, mass killings, and crimes against humanity. These are accusations that carry the weight of history's darkest chapters. For Aboud to casually invoke such language against a democratically elected prime minister, placing her name alongside the likes of Vladimir Putin, Omar al-Bashir, and Charles Taylor, is not just irresponsible. It is an obscene trivialization of genuine human suffering.
Here are 10 reasons why Aboud's statement is the anatomy of absurdity and its sheer magnitude of disconnect from reality. 1. Jurisdictional illiteracy. The incident was a U.S. military action, not a directive from Trinidad and Tobago's government. The ICC cannot prosecute leaders for actions taken by other sovereign states, a basic principle Aboud appears to have missed entirely. 2. Command responsibility fantasy. Unlike actual war criminals who ordered atrocities, PM Persad-Bissessar neither commanded nor authorized any military action. She possessed zero operational control over U.S. forces.
3. Atrocity inflation. War crimes involve systematic massacres, genocide, ethnic cleansing, and deliberate targeting of civilians. Aboud's conflation of a maritime incident with crimes against humanity reveals either stunning ignorance or willful distortion.
4. Obscene historical comparisons. To mention Kamla Persad-Bissessar in the same breath as leaders responsible for mass murder, rape camps, and child soldiers is not just wrong, it is morally reprehensible. 5. Trivializing real suffering. Every casual war crimes accusation cheapens the agony of millions who endured genuine atrocities in Rwanda, Bosnia, Darfur, and Ukraine. Aboud's recklessness dishonors their memory. 6. Political theater, masquerading as advocacy. This statement reeks of partisan malice rather than genuine concern for fishermen's welfare. Aboud sounds less like a maritime advocate and more like an opposition attack dog. 7. Legal illiteracy on display. The ICC indicts heads of state who are directly responsible for systematic atrocities. Aboud's fundamental misunderstanding of international law is embarrassing for someone in his position.
8. Poisoning public discourse. Rather than fostering constructive dialogue about maritime safety and fishermen's rights, Aboud has contaminated the conversation with inflammatory nonsense.
9. Leadership malpractice. As president of a national NGO, Aboud has a responsibility to be factual, measured, and constructive. Instead, he has brought shame upon his organization and the fishermen he claims to represent.
10. Doctoral level dotishness. This entire episode represents advanced dotishology, foolishness so profound it transcends mere mistake and enters the realm of spectacular intellectual collapse. The real war crime against common sense. The International Criminal Court exists to prosecute genuine monsters. Leaders like Slobodan Milosevic, who orchestrated ethnic cleansing, Omar al-Bashir, who presided over genocide in Darfur, and Vladimir Putin, whose forces have systematically targeted civilians in Ukraine. These are individuals whose actions resulted in mass graves, refugee crises, and generational trauma. To place a democratically elected prime minister responding to an international incident outside her jurisdiction in such company is not merely factually wrong, it is morally bankrupt. It trivializes the suffering of actual war crimes victims and demonstrates a breathtaking ignorance of both history and law. The dangerous precedent of reckless rhetoric. Aboud's statement represents something more sinister than simple ignorance. It exemplifies the dangerous degradation of political discourse, where hyperbole replaces argument, where accusation substitutes for evidence, and where the gravest charges in international law become tools for petty political point scoring. When legitimate maritime concerns exist, and they do, the solution is not to hurl baseless international criminal accusations. It is to engage in substantive policy discussions, to propose concrete solutions, and to work constructively with government agencies. Aboud had an opportunity to be a serious voice for fishermen's rights. Instead, he chose to be a carnival barker hawking inflammatory nonsense. His behavior sets a toxic precedent. If war crimes accusations can be casually lobbed at democratic leaders over incidents they did not control, then the term loses all meaning. We risk creating an environment where the most serious charges in international law become as common and as meaningless as everyday political insults. The ultimate test of credibility. This episode will serve as the ultimate test of Gary Aboud's credibility and that of any organization or individual who chooses to associate with such reckless rhetoric. Serious advocates for fishermen's welfare will distance themselves from this absurdity. Responsible civil society leaders will recognize it for what it is: political theater of the worst kind. The real tragedy is not just Aboud's spectacular failure of judgment, but the damage it inflicts on legitimate advocacy efforts. Every fisherman who genuinely needs better safety protocols, improved infrastructure, or fairer policies has been poorly served by a leader who chose sensationalism over substance, inflammatory accusations over intelligent analysis.
In conclusion, when Dotishology meets democracy, Gary Aboud has earned his place in the annals of political absurdity. His war crimes accusation against Prime Minister Persaud Bissessa will be remembered not as a moment of moral courage, but as a textbook example of how not to conduct public advocacy. He has transformed what should have been a serious organization into a laughingstock, and in doing so has committed the real crime here, not against humanity, but against the very fishermen whose interests he was elected to protect.
In a functioning democracy, citizens have the right to criticize their leaders. They have the right to disagree with policies, to demand accountability, and to advocate for change. What they do not have is the right to falsely accuse democratically elected officials of the most serious crimes known to international law without evidence, jurisdiction, or basic understanding of what those crimes actually entail.
If Aboud possessed even a fraction of the moral authority he claims, he would issue a public apology, not just to the Prime Minister, but to war crimes victims worldwide whose suffering he has trivialized. He would refocus his organization on the legitimate maritime issues that actually affect fishermen's lives. He would choose substance over spectacle, facts over fiction, advocacy over accusation. But based on his recent performance, such rational behavior seems about as likely as the ICC actually entertaining his delusional petition. Gary Aboud has shown us what happens when activism abandons reason, when advocacy embraces absurdism, and when the serious business of democratic discourse is hijacked by those who have confused attention with achievement.
The fishermen of Trinidad and Tobago deserve better leadership. Democracy deserves more serious discourse. And the victims of actual war crimes deserve more respect than having their suffering cheapened by someone who apparently earned his PhD in Dotishology with a dissertation in political delusion. The only crime committed here has been against common sense, and for that, Gary Aboud stands guilty as charged. If he genuinely cares about fishermen, let him focus on safety, infrastructure, and fair policies. But if he continues down this path of baseless, politically tainted fear-mongering, he risks turning fishermen and friends of the sea into fishermen and friends of foolishness.